Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a manager or studying to be one, you've probably spent countless hours meticulously crafting the perfect emails, holding strategic meetings, and drafting up airtight policy docs. But what if I told you that all those standard management tools are literally ignoring half of reality? Today, we're exploring the hidden material world of management. We're going to see how the physical world dictates your success just as much as your brilliant ideas do. So let's just dive right in. Here's the million-dollar question. Why do your employees ignore your rules? It's a daily, frankly frustrating struggle. You know the drill. You send out a memo, update the handbook, give a highly motivating speech at the all hands, and yet the unwanted behavior just keeps happening. We almost always describe management in these purely mental or social terms, right? Like decisions, culture, motivation. But relying just on words and memos, that leaves a massive blind spot. When people don't listen, the traditional fix is just more. More emails, more training, more meetings. But there's a totally different way to look at this, which is the material fix. This means actually changing the physical environment and the objects within it to shape behavior. Every single organization is material. We're all working through physical bodies in rooms with a size and acoustics completely shape how we interact using physical objects. Sometimes the absolute best way to fix a behavioral problem isn't to try and change someone's mind, but to literally change the physical matter around them. Which brings us to our first section, when memos fail, objects succeed. To really grasp this concept, let's look at a classic management anecdote. It perfectly shows how physical objects can just step up and do the jobs that our language simply can't. There's this famous story about hotels that desperately wanted guests to return their room keys to the front desk before checking out. First, they tried signs. Then they had staff remind guests. They tried written notices in the rooms. All of it completely failed. Guests just kept pocketing the keys. The behavior only actually changed when the hotel attached a massive, cumbersome object to the key. Instead of relying on goodwill, a request expressed through language became partly delegated to an object. You can see a real clear escalation here, from failed verbal management to totally successful material management. Purely language-based requests, the signage, the friendly staff reminders, they just didn't work. But slapping a heavy key fob on there, that did the trick. Now, the crucial thing to understand here is that the heavy key didn't remove the guest's free will. A determined person could absolutely still walk away with it, but its sheer weight and size fundamentally altered the physical possibilities. It suddenly made returning the key way more convenient than keeping it. Moving on to Section 2. What actually belongs to materiality? So if a heavy key can basically act as a manager, what else counts? Well, it's way broader than just obvious pieces of tech. And honestly, it's hiding in plain sight in your office right now. Materiality isn't just obvious stuff like keys or uniforms. It's bodies. Organizations depend on human bodies that experience fatigue, temperature changes, and stress. It's space, too. A long boardroom table with one chair at the head creates a totally different power dynamic than, say, a circle of chairs. It's technology, like your databases. But here's the wild part. It's also documents. Yeah, even paper contracts or your PowerPoint slides are physical forces. They literally dictate how information is arranged and transported. Let's zoom out a bit for Section 3. Strategy meets physical reality. Now that we've got a handle on small-scale objects, let's scale this up. Let's see how these material properties actually dictate massive corporate strategies. Take IKEA's famous linear flat pack model. That entire business model relies entirely on the physical properties of being stackable, light, and compact. It dictates warehouse space, customer transport, the whole shebang. But if that same company decides to pivot to a circular economy model, meaning they want to take back used furniture, they suddenly face a fully assembled, bulky, heavy sofa. That heavy sofa now has to travel backward through a logistics system that was designed purely for compact outward flow. See, strategies sound incredibly flexible when you're just typing them up in a Word doc, but they instantly crash into the weight, the size, and the location of the physical world. Shifting to sustainability or a circular economy, that's not just a strategic commitment you can just announce in a press release. It requires a massive physical reorganization of matter. The very material arrangements that made your linear models so successful literally become your biggest constraints the second you try to change direction. Okay, Section 4, the power of affordances. To actually go in and fix these material problems, managers need some specific vocabulary to diagnose what's going awry in their physical spaces. The first key concept here is an affordance. Basically, it's a possibility for action. That flat package we talked about affords compact transport. But notice that affordances are highly relational. For example, a set of stairs affords access to someone who can easily walk, but they certainly do not afford access to someone in a wheelchair. A searchable archive affords retrieving decisions quickly. As a manager, you really have to look closely at your environment and ask yourself, what actions are these objects making possible and for exactly whom? Now, the flip side of that is a constraint. A constraint is something that makes an action difficult or even impossible in that same relationship. That fully assembled sofa, that constrains ordinary customer transport. A conference room with heavy, bolted-down seating constrains spontaneous collaboration. But keep in mind, constraints aren't always a bad thing. Think about a locked door. It constrains entry, right? But that means it actually affords security. So the question you need to ask is, what is my physical environment making difficult or entirely impossible?
This brings us to Section 5, Materializing Ideas in AI. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, my work is purely conceptual. I just deal with high-level strategy and software. But here is a really fascinating reality check. Think about a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It doesn't actually exist until it's drawn in 4 boxes on a whiteboard or a screen. The very second you put that abstract strategy into a PowerPoint template, the material form takes over. That grid organizes your attention. It forces you to compress your nuanced thoughts to fit inside those little boxes. It visually separates internal from external. That artifact, that physical layout, is actually shaping the final strategy you end up presenting. And this exact same concept applies to the newest modern technology too. If a manager uses AI to write a document, who or what really wrote it? It's never just the human, and it's never just the AI. It's the human's prompt combined with the AI's vast training data, restricted by the user interface design, and all of it powered by very physical servers and background infrastructure. It's a completely distributed, combined human material arrangement. You literally cannot separate the social from the material.
Finally, Section 6, the new management toolkit.
So how do we actually put all of this into practice? Well, here are your 3 key takeaways from this explainer. First off, expand your diagnosis way beyond just policy. When your people aren't following the rules, stop writing more memos and start looking at the physical environment. Second, implement your ideas by physically changing spaces. Translate your managerial intentions into objects, software interfaces, and room layouts. And third, always remember that organization is a combination. You aren't just managing people, you are managing the complex combination of people and the material objects they interact with every single day. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with one final provocative question. What is your physical environment forcing your team to do right now? I seriously challenge you to look around your own office today. Look at the software you're forced to use, the exact layout of the desks, the rigid format of your weekly reports. Try to reevaluate your biggest, most annoying management frustrations, not as human failures, but as material constraints. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, good luck redesigning your material world.